Welcome, and today we're here at the How to Build a Kick-Ass Remote Staffing Team, and we want to talk about today, how has this pandemic impacted the stigma or changed our way we think about offshoring? And so today I have 𝐚𝐜𝐜𝐬 with us, as well as Sean Parikh and Chris Rivera. We're all here to just kind of kick around the idea. What has changed since we've been experiencing this wonderful situation that has changed how we do business, how we see things, and hopefully we'll be able to come to some terms with it. So with that said, I'd like to start off with 𝐚𝐜𝐜, have him kind of open up the concept here and then introduce the topics, and let's see if we can take it from here. So it's all yours.
Thanks so much, Mike. Appreciate that introduction. And, you asked a very good question, which was, what has the pandemic changed? And maybe we should be asking what hasn't changed, or we've just gone through so many changes that it's easier just to look for the things that have remained the same. The good news is that what has remained the same, hopefully, is our value systems, right? Those don't change, shouldn't change anyway, no matter what's going on. So when it comes to offshoring, what's interesting is that what the pandemic did is it forced everyone to go on remote working environments, and people were forced to make it work somehow, right? We had some rough patches, and technology was kind of there but wasn't there, and Zoom was trying to keep up with the change quickly, but everyone sort of gathered together to make it work. And ultimately, look, we're in August now, right? And we've been doing this for months now. So this, in my mind, and also in talking to the accounting firms that we work with, this notion of sort of offshoring has started to have a different definition. They think of it more as a remote working structure rather than this offshoring stereotypical outlook at what this really is, right? So there's a lot of impact that this situation has had on the way we view things, and in a good way, actually, has forced us to challenge our preconceived ideas about certain topics in business, mainly the offshoring. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, you mentioned, Mike, that how has the pandemic changed the stigma, right? So let's first, if you guys agree, Sean and Chris, if you guys agree, let's talk about what is the stigma first, and then we go back and we can talk about how that has changed based on your perspectives. So why don't we start with you, Sean? What do you think about in terms of what are the common stigmas you have encountered? You've been doing this for quite some time, so you've kind of seen and heard it all, right?
Well, as you said, pandemic has been a great leveler, to so to say. I mean, pandemic has not really, it was not an exception whether you are living in a developed part of the world or whether you're living in a developing part of the world or in a developed. Well, each part of the world is equally impacted. So it kind of leveled, everyone on the same, at the same place, that you are a human being and a virus can show you at the end of the day, every human being is equal on earth, So yeah. It acts, pandemic that way on humanity has given a huge impact, according to me, on the mindset. When we talk about accounting firms, what we have been talking to several thousands of them, like you, 𝐚𝐜𝐜, like Chris, Mike, we coach them, we talk to them, we work with them in and out. And there are several, layers of the stigma. But one of the fundamental thing, what inhibits accounting firm to openly look as offshore hiring is what my client would think about this, or what my client would think, or how should I tell my client about this. This is one of the fundamental factor. Although it is now widely accepted, it is accelerating. The acceptance is accelerating now, but still there is a mindset that what would happen if my client would come to know about this. And what we experienced is, more than client, it is your mindset. It is you who think that it is something what your client would think. So probably if you step and try with 10 clients, 20 clients, 30 clients, you will realize that probably 1 out of 100 would have some kind of a problem in the world, which is so consolidated and which is so integrated. So this is probably, Sia, I think is one of the core stigma around offshore hiring, especially for accounting firms.
Yeah, that's interesting. As you were talking, Sean, I could think of so many different instances when I would hear this exact stigma coming from CPAs that were looking into possibly doing offshoring. And what really was at the heart of their concerns, as you mentioned, was this notion that somehow the quality of the work would suffer because they are offshoring, and that would be perceived in a negative way from the client's perspective, and it would be delivered in a negative way from their own perspective. But that's not necessarily the case. Knowledge is power, and I think what that revealed to me, Sean, it was that there was just the lack of knowledge in terms of how does a good offshoring work, right? So you can go to many restaurants. Not all restaurants are going to give you good food. Some you may make you sick, but you won't stop going to restaurants. You continue going to them. And I think of like services like offshoring. There's good and there's bad ones. And if you just do your due diligence and get involved with companies who really know what they're doing, like Entigrity, and ask some good questions. A good offshoring company, in my opinion, would welcome questions, would actually relish in answering the questions, because the questions break the barrier of this gap of lack of knowledge of how this really works. And if you're really an offshoring company that know what you're doing, you take care of things like, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but would take care of things like security, like the quality of your workforce. You got those two main things. And that goes a long way, especially for someone who's never done offshoring, or maybe someone who's have had offshoring and has had a bad experience with it. But definitely one of the stigmas is what you mentioned, Sean. So very, very interesting topic. Let's go to Mike. Mike, what are, you are a CPA, and you've been in this, not just in the accounting industry, but in this specific world of offshoring and how it impacts everything. What have you been hearing from your end that is different than what Sean has been hearing, perhaps?
Well, as Sean indicated, that the concern is of not working well. That, I guess, what I think is people don't quite grasp the conceptual opportunity of the offshore staffing relationship to what they're doing. Quality, of course, is a concern, but I think there's a lack of knowledge. Is how am I going to make this happen? How will I work with this person who's so far away? When that might be true, but they're really no different than they're just in the office next door if we're working on the same project through the cloud or whatever the connection process is. So I think there's a lack of understanding or concern about how to make it successfully work and produce. And so I think that's one of the stigmas I get feedback on is, gosh, I'm not sure. How am I going to control this person so far away, or how am I going to get connection? And then of course it becomes a technology conversation. Then it comes into a security conversation, and there's a concern about security that gets mixed up because the human experience is that the further away from me, the less secure it is, which is not necessarily true anymore. And as Sean mentioned earlier about the whole boundary things, I mean, the whole world is, flat. I mean, it's like, I'm always amazed just personally. I just get just the fact that so much information is so quickly and readily available from anywhere now. It's surprisingly still new to a lot of people. I mean, I'm in my late 50s. It's just stunning to me at the pace of change compared to when I started accounting with no computers.
Yeah.
I started with no computers, folks. A 10 key and a pencil. That's what I started with. And so this change is so dramatic. I'm talking to people that are just my age and they started with no computers and a pencil. So we have to help them be beyond their history and help them understand that. So that's kind of somewhere I'm at.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Do you think, I know we're still in the stigma part of our conversation, but I'm curious if you think because of what just happened to the whole entire world, that the infrastructure, the security protocols have improved, have almost, there's been a boost, or the opposite, that it's more vulnerable now than it's been before. What is your impression on that, Mike?
Well, when I think about Zoom, for example, that we're currently using for this thing here, I mean, they exploded in use as so many other online meeting platforms. And it uncovered some concerns, no doubt, some security issues and some hacking stuff and all that sort of thing. I'm sure we're all aware. So I think the sheer volume and demand has forced them to make improvements that maybe didn't happen or wasn't as known. Crisis doesn't necessarily expose. I mean, it almost always exposes weakness.
Yeah.
A crisis doesn't build character, exposes weakness, and so so those things were exposed. So the big companies, not the big ones, but the companies involved, made changes and shifts. And I know Entigrity had to make some adjustments as well.
Yeah.
And it's something that is true. And so I think we become better as a result if we take it seriously and adjust as needed and don't put our head in the ground. And so good companies are better as a result of this. Weaker companies might be gone.
Yeah. Interesting perspective there, Mike. Yeah, we're hoping that the security has improved, and it has in a lot of different areas, but we'll get a little bit more later on into the security protocols of an offshoring type environment, probably more specifically the best practices that we can observe from Entigrity specifically, since this is something that is very personal and you guys, it's very near and dear to your hearts. So we can explore on that a little bit later. Chris, let's go to you. I know that you just finished a webinar, so hopefully you had a Red Bull.
Give you time to relax.
or you had some energetic protein shake that is giving you enough energy to answer the very tough questions we're going over this very important Facebook Live event, right? What are the stigmas you've encountered? You've seen all kinds and all types. So share some of those with our listeners today. That would be great.
Yeah, a lot of the hesitation in the beginning was just the remote aspect of it, right? The client was comfortable with everything, and but the remote aspect was just nerve-wracking, and try to explain to them that remote working has been around since the 80s. It's really taken off across several industries, especially in technology, financial technology, but it hasn't really, made its way into the accounting world. And then boom, pandemic happened, gas pedal, everyone go virtual. Do you have to be fully virtual? No. But everyone's become virtual. Now they're like, oh, it's not that bad, right? But then, they as you start thinking, it always seems to be, especially when you're thinking about the security aspect or the quality of work, it's maybe one or two people, three people that are assuming that's how everyone's thinking, right? Assuming how their 100 clients are thinking, or the other 10 associates to work with are thinking, unfortunately. And they need to be more collaborative and talk about it and explore it, not just automatically assume it's India, oh no, security. It's like, wait a second, or offshoring, or security. It's wait, no, it's not the case whatsoever. So the quality of work too, right? Yeah, it's a lot. Most companies, and the price is low, right? So people are like, it's probably going to be that reflective of the work too, and so there's a hesitation there. But you got to explore. You got to take a look at it. But the biggest thing is, yeah, the security aspect. And I've walked into so many last year I walked into so many client offices. I just walked right in and knocked on their door. And you have to think, and then I see looking around, everyone's on their cell phones, people are checking their personal email. There's no cameras anywhere. And it's like, well, wait a second. How secure is your office? You know, and so again, it's just one person's thought process encompasses everyone else's, but that's really the truth.
Yeah. That's really interesting, right? We have this presumption that for some reason, everything within the four corners of our office, in fact, is the safest security you could possibly have,
Ever.
right? You know, I work, you know, I have one of the services at FY we have is that we actually have someone go in and try to break in the security system of firms just to show them their vulnerabilities. And what we ought to do is just do that for anyone who's questioning the security of offshoring, because it kind of levels the playing field, right? And just, you know, as you were talking, I was actually admiring I was listening to you, but I was admiring your Apple earpieces here.
Yeah,
And
Bluetooth. My Bluetooth, yeah.
Yeah, your Bluetooth. Yeah, it took me back to the days that we all had these cord earpieces that we would be using, right? And at some point, an invention came, an innovator came and said, look, we can take, there were other wireless headphones before the Apple wireless headphones came out. So why wasn't it so popular? Just like offshoring, you know, I think of that, there were offshoring before, right? So what happened that all of a sudden it has become a commonly used system for firms who are looking into the future? And what I like to just get people's attention in terms of anyone who has either had a bad experience with offshoring or thinking about doing offshoring in the future. It is about cutting the cord. If you have never done the offshoring, it's about cutting the cord. It may feel a little bit anxious if you've never done it, but you've got to trust the process and trust the system and make sure you're working with individuals that know what they're doing, with a company that knows what they're doing, because that can save you a lot of grief. That can save you a lot of headache, and it will take care of the very things that the stigmas that people have, such as security. You know, a great offshoring company like Entigrity. I don't work for Entigrity, so anything I'm saying right now, it's not like I'm getting paid for it. It's a straight from the heart. It is, look, we work with accounting firms and they use Entigrity. So we've seen it from both ends, from this end and from the other end. And what we've seen is some great systems for the security and the quality of work and that kind of thing. So it's just cutting the cord and allowing to move forward in the industry with doing something that actually makes sense with the right company. Now, so we've talked about stigmas, guys. You know, and they're all, yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah. So one more thing which I want to, in fact, I was talking to a client today.
Yeah.
Because Chris was in the webinar, I happened to talk with Gina, Chris, and you know, she had concerns. One of the stigmas that we talk about, that, you know, they are I think I don't know, but they are a big firm in Canada, and she thought that because she is into human resource management, into her firm, she thought that, well, we have not done this before only for the reason. I thought that what my team would think about this. Am I trying to, I mean, I don't want them to feel insecure about it. I don't want them to, you know, feel that I'm trying to make them feel that you're no more a part of the company. So because we have built this company, it's not just a money-making machine for us. It is what we are. It is our existence.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
And I was actually clueless, you know. I did not
Yeah.
have an answer at that point of time with me that, am I really doing something right? I mean, I questioned myself.
Yeah.
That, well, what she's saying makes perfect sense, you know. In an ideal world, if you're living in a community, your first responsibility is towards that community.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, that goes
But
along
then
with
I thought, if you're not remaining agile, what Zoom did to Skype will happen. You know,
Yeah.
this pandemic, Zoom
Yeah.
ate the lunch of Skype. Skype was
Yeah.
here for 20 years, and Zoom is today the #1 application for video calling and video meetings.
Yeah.
So, well, it was literally confusing for me,
Yeah.
even though after talking to 1,000 accountants,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
might have the answer ready to go from my template. But it really struck me, and she was telling from her heart that,
Yeah.
but I have never done this only for the reason, not that we are completely remote in Canada,
Yeah.
even though we have employees in the same city, we have capabilities to be complete remote. But this is one thing that I don't want my employees to think. And yeah, that is one of the stigma, whether we agree
Yeah.
or whether we
Yeah.
speak or
Yeah.
not.
I want to make sure I give also Mike an opportunity to speak, but I before I forget, because I think you were going to say something, Mike, but isn't it interesting that in terms of our humanity always cares about what others think? Isn't that some of the reason why sometimes we buy the type of car we buy, we live where we live, we wear the type of things we wear, and it's not just to the accounting industry and people, it's just us caring about what others think. It's that affirmation we look for. But beyond that, more responsibly, it is taking care, feeling responsible for the I guess mental health of our team in this situation that you brought up. Mike, you were going to say something.
Well, I was going to say that what Sean was saying goes along with the other very, very close related stigma or concern is that of sending jobs out of our country. And he thought, you know, most companies, CPA firms especially, you know, they're patriotic to a certain extent. They want to support local. And the reality is, however, many firms, especially those that might be more rural entities, don't have the ability to always bring in or acquire the type of talent that they need to be successful, and allowing a remote staffing offshore group to take care of some of those issues, that day-to-day routine things that are distracting their key employees from being as successful as they can. So if I'm a number 2 guy or 3 guy in a firm and I'm frustrated with some of the boring tasks, we use that phrase from my perspective, that are preventing me from really helping the client like I want to, I'm actually pleased when I find out my firm is sending some of those things off to somebody else. I don't care where they are. I just don't want to deal with those things. I want to deal with the client. I want to do what I do best, and I can't all the time. So it's kind of,
you know what, you know what, Mike, it's interesting because one of the things I always tell the partners is that when you think of your team, every single team member, they're really great at doing a handful of things. They're really great at it. There's 2, 3, or maybe 4 things that they're really good at. And what offshoring does is that it makes available to your team so they could do more of what they're really good at. And the other stuff that they're not as great with it, or they just do it out of just pure obligation. If you take those off of their plate, they have the headspace now to actually do some meaningful work. Now we've talked about stigmas, and almost every stigma has been a negative one. Here's a positive stigma that they have, which it always fascinates me. And I know I've had conversations with Sean about this. So it's that there's this positive stigma that, hey, I have a problem with my team because of whatever reason, and I'm just going to resolve it because now I'm going to get this offshoring team, and I'm going to offshore some work, and it's going to fix the team morale. It's going to fix all the management issues I've had with my team because I'm offshoring. Poof, it's gone. It's out. It doesn't exist anymore. It goes away. And that's a stigma. It's a positive stigma, right? But the team morale, and as you know, and I'm interested to hear your perspective on this, Sean, is, and Mike, you mentioned this as well. You know, crisis, they don't change our character; they reveal our character, right? So how the character of the partners and how their approach is to the team, and specifically in that example you brought up, Sean, with that lady you were talking to in regards to her team, her character is a caring character. She cares about her team. And the offshoring will be an expansion of that onto the offshore team to be inclusive of that team as they join forces together. It's not an outside versus inside mentality, which causes a lot of problems I've seen in offshoring and all that. It is combining, bringing in together in a collaborative environment where both teams feel like they're part of the same cause, they're being cared for. And that doesn't just happen on its own. So what I have seen time and time again, people have done offshoring without success in terms of their team morale, and they're wondering why. And when I interview their on-site team, when I interview them, they reveal problems that were there long before there was offshoring. It just got exasperated with that. And so one of the things that it is, it's crucial for people to pay attention to is that if you don't have a system in place where you're actually taking care of your employees, where the team morale is good, that's not going to just get fixed offshore. What are your thoughts on that, John? What do you think about this?
This might be true, but very, very difficult to kind of sometimes sell to accounting firms.
Yeah.
Because, you know, team morale is as good as yours. I always believe that. And I've been thinking about this, if your team is somewhere finding difficult to come to you, or somewhere finding difficult to, you know, look at the things from the perspective of how a business owner or how a manager would look, or how a senior would look, somewhere I think it's a fault of the senior. So, well, I agree that sometimes it balances that it brings a balance of power. What we call in the whole equation. Sometimes, you know, you have an old employee, you can't really tell her because you know that she has contributed so much to the firm. But now the problem is she is not understanding that we are evolving and we are going in the next phase. She cannot just play with the same rules. Principles are same, but the rule changes. So she needs to evolve and reinvent herself. And you are a boss, you are an owner, you are a partner. You try to, you know, tell her or tell him about, you know, this is the way we are going. This will require a new you, a new person of yours. And so that I have seen that somewhere when offshore hiring comes, it works both the ways. It has a negative thing around it too, but sometimes it creates a balance of power where it brings a level of insecurity in your onshore team, a good insecurity, which keeps them on their toes.
Yeah, a healthy dose that
Yes.
it keeps them fresh in terms of in terms of that the firm is actually moving forward into the future.
But we have seen in many cases there is huge resistance coming in from second level management, especially from accountants and senior accountants, and such a level of resistance that they don't want to cooperate to the process. But we have tried. When we do the onboarding, we try to talk to the partners, talk to the owners, and talk to team also, and tell them that this is how the normal situation is. Unless we collaborate with each other, there is no way out. We can make this successful, and you know, at the end of the day, the firm will suffer. So we are all working for the same objective, which is, you know, firm's growth.
Every firm,
every
every firm has a gap from speaking with clients, there's always a gap, and that's what I try to uncover. And when you uncover that gap, it could be they have too many data entry and not enough senior level, or the senior level are just tired of just doing the data entry. They don't need to do that. And so they're tired, they're bogged down. And then, or there's mid-level management or team leads that need to be in place. So every firm has a gap somewhere. When you uncover that, it ends up being that the onshore team is like, oh, finally a solution. You know, as long as they're being helped in some type of way, and when you uncover that and you communicate and you collaborate, onshore, offshore, wherever, just everyone's on the same page, then everyone's like, holy cow, this is amazing. No firm has ever reduced. If they reduced, it's like one person. It's not replacing. It's not like 10 onshore and then we're just replacing all 10 with offshore. No, they need help. They need 2 or 3 offshore to help those 10 onshore with the gap in their firm. I see that all the time. And once that's uncovered, that this takes off.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, you know, we've covered a lot of things and we're going over time here. So I want to make sure that we give a proper attention to in terms of what has changed. So let me just summarize of what has changed in terms of this pandemic changing the stigma, these stigmas we have. Number one is that we realize we're a world without any borders, really, right? Because unfortunately, the virus impacts everyone the same. So we're not as off-putting when it comes to working with other jurisdictions. That's one thing that I've seen change. The situation has forced us also to work remotely, and that has changed the perspective of what offshoring is, which is not that different from working remotely. It's just a different country versus the same country. Otherwise, there's virtually no different, except that you get more security, as a matter of fact, in some situations, what you already have. So, and Chris, you mentioned it as well. Maintaining the quality, I think that is, we've realized some of the firms we know that they've gone working remote, they realize their current existing team, they're not up to the par or the quality that they had hoped they were in. And so the same question about security goes in with the quality of work you're currently producing. And there's this presumption that what we produce now is way better than what the offshoring team is. That's not always the case. And that has become to light because of the current pandemic. And then finally, in terms of sustainability, everyone has realized that, look, we don't know, we're in uncharted territories. Things are going to change in the future. And this is a time that you don't just hold on to what you got and hope that nothing changes. This is a time for you to make changes so that when things occur in the future, you already have a system in place and you're able to continue your business, continue servicing your clients without a hitch, without skipping a beat. And that's where offshoring can actually help you establish those processes in place so that you actually become more empowered rather than feel like you're being restricted. So that's a summary of everything. And I just want to leave it there and give it back to you, Mike. I know we're over time, so I appreciate everyone's input.
Yeah, we try to keep it in 30 minutes here. And so we're kind of doing, so maybe since you had a nice little summary there, I don't know if Chris and Sean would like to kind of give a 2-minute or 1 minute, just Sean, you went to mute. So
I muted myself. No, I would like to thank Mike and Sia and Chris. We are talking about things we usually don't, at least in public forum.
Yeah.
So I'd like to continue this kind of conversations. You know, at the end of the day, it is something which is real, which exists amongst us. So there is nothing wrong talking, especially when it is for the larger good. So I'm thankful to every one of you that we are talking today about this topic, and I love chatting with you again.
Okay. Any final thoughts,
no,
Chris?
This needs to be brought to everyone's attention that, you know, bottom line is a remote workforce is a global workforce, however you look at it. And it's just, unfortunately, it took unfortunate events to get us here, but at the same time, there's always opportunity ahead. You have to look ahead. see it spot on, right? Yeah, if anything comes, if we have an invasion from Mars or whatever's going to happen, pandemic, you just have to be ready for it, and you can be. Everything is there right for you, and we're only here to help. So,
Great, good point.
Just one last quick comment, Mike, for anyone who's listening, who's got their own stigma about things and would like to have a conversation, I would invite them to reach out to any of us four here. Would be happy to continue this conversation. Sorry, Mike, go on.
No problem. Yeah, we're available at entigrity.com to connect with us and ask questions and continue the conversation. So with that said, I suppose we will be signing off for today. Thank you all for being here, and all those who checked in with us on Facebook Live. We hope to see you another time. Thank you very much.